Good morning, CSL Denver, and thank you, Freddie, for that beautiful music. It's great to be back with you again. I'm Reverend Mark Gilbert, and today's theme is Share the Dream, if you haven't picked up on that already. Now, one thing that occurred to me, I woke up this morning and I had an interesting dream last night, and I immediately shared it with my wife and we discussed it. And there was great value in sharing that dream because it allowed me to deepen in the wisdom that was coming through my intuitive knowingness this morning. But I want to say that's not the sharing the dream that we're talking about today. If you read the CSL notices that have been going out from CSL Denver regarding today's message, it read that one of the most important values we have is to see the oneness in everyone. And this means not only thinking we are one, but living as one. When we acknowledge and recognize the diversity of our own spiritual communities, we become witnesses to the greater light that shines through. This visceral experience changes us. So it gives us a little bit of a taste of where we're going today. There's also a beautiful quote that was used in the PR, and I'm going to read it real quickly, and we'll come back to it later. And this is from our founder, Ernest Holmes, who wrote, "The tree is not a person. All it does is depend on nature. All it knows is to grow. So it never short circuits the divine energy that gives it life." Beautiful words of Ernest Holmes. So obviously today's message is something about oneness and diversity and the using the divine energy that's flowing through us. And we are going to come to that. But as we circle around this topic of sharing the dream this morning, I have 3 teaching points that I really want to share with you. And I would invite you, since you're watching this on video, to maybe grab some pencil and paper, because I'm going to have some homework for you later, a few action items for you to do post-message. Because after all, you're spending a little bit of time this morning, not only to be inspired, but hopefully to look to your own life and how you can grow and step into more fullness of who you are as a spiritual being on this planet. And so I've got a little action item for you to take on a little later. But the 3 points that came up for me as I was looking at the material and thinking about this topic of Share the Dream, which many of our CSL communities are doing this particular Sunday, was 3 points came up for me. The first one is that we all carry some dream in us. You, within your awareness, have a dream for the world, your individual life, how you're showing up, what you're doing, what you're accomplishing, and also a dream for this world and how we all interact together. So we want to spend a few minutes talking about that. Secondly, how does our philosophy of the science of mind and what we teach here at CSL relate to our dream? How can it help us manifest that dream? And the third point is that, how might we manifest it? How might we take the teachings and actually put them into practical application in our own individual lives? So that's where we're going for the next few minutes. Now, my first question to you then is, what is your dream? When I ask you what your dream is, what comes forward for you? You know, for many people, it's the dream about their careers, their jobs, their families, and things of that nature, and that's good. That's one aspect of a dream, is the dream about how your life unfolds for you. But I want you to take in that a little broader today. Since we're talking about sharing the dream, we're talking about a shared dream that we might actually have with other people on this planet. And my question to you, it really is, what kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world do you want to hand off to your children and your grandchildren? As you think about 10 years, 15 years, 20 years into the future, or even further, what do you want that world to look like? And I know that somewhere within us, we all have an idea of the life we'd like, but what I'm calling you today to do is to put that in a little more crystal vision, something that you can anchor within your awareness. You know, anybody who's familiar with my teaching knows that the idea of having a vision is important to me. You know, I've written several books, and some of the books have references into the importance of creating a vision. In fact, one of my first books was entitled Be Yourself, Evolving the World Through Personal Empowerment. It's a shameless plug for the book, but the reason I'm bringing it up this morning is because when I wrote this book back in 2012, one of the key things I was trying to bring about through the writings was the fact that the earth and humanity is at a critical choice point. It's as true today as it was then. And that we had a couple of paths that we could go. One was to a higher path of more love and harmony and peace on the planet, a world that works for all in our vernacular. And the other was we could go to a lesser path, one of more problems and issues and conflict. In which direction did we want to go? The central tenet of this book was that we could, if we chose that higher path, bring it about by doing three things. One was to focus on our commonalities more than our differences. The second was to hold a common vision that we all collectively had towards what that future looked like. And the third was to find your inner calling, because once you find your inner calling and purpose in life, you become about service to other people. And that was the central aspect of the book. But that second key point in the book is what I wanted to zero in on for just a moment. And that is, what is your vision? And so I gave it some thought, and I drew from visions of CSL, the United Nations, the US, and other aspects of it, and looked at it and said, what is my vision for the world? And at this time, I wrote the following, and I would just like to read from this book for just a moment. And this is looking for what I felt like was the vision that I held for us collectively. We have all of our basic physical needs easily met. We have good health. We have a nice home that protects us from the elements. We live in a society that ensures our basic freedoms and safety. We have a good education and opportunity to grow. We have a network of friends and family who love us. We have the opportunity to grow our standard of living to a comfortable level. We have the opportunity to develop our spiritual nature. We answer our calling to be of service to others. Now, that's what I wrote back then, and I don't give it up as the perfect model. In fact, as I've reflected back on it and thought about, is there anything that I would change at this point in my life and rewriting that, what I've thought about is that I would probably state a little more clearly the importance of maintaining the earth as a viable environment for us to live in. Probably words more about treating each other with dignity and respect in there. I think those points are inherent in what was written back then, but I'd probably, state them a little more clearly if I were rewriting the book these days. But the key point that I'm hoping I can get within you this morning is I want you to think about what's the vision for your life and our collective life. And I want you to be able to hold that vision in your mind. Now, you can talk, it helps to share that dream with other people, because in the dialogue around your dream, you then help crystallize it. So my invitation to you, and the first homework item, is to take some time this week to think about what's the kind of world you want to live in. Jot down the characteristics of it, and then have a conversation with someone else and get some feedback on what you've written, and then fine-tune it, and then hold it. If you're somebody who has a routine spiritual practice where you do affirmative prayer, I would invite you to bring that vision of your world into your affirmative prayer. But the key, and the very first point, is to make sure that you are having a vision, that you have that vision clearly in your mind. Okay, the second point that I wanted to get to today, and that is, how does our philosophy of the science of mind support the creation of this vision? Well, there's lots of ways I could cover, but there are three brief ones that I want to share with you this morning. One is that we teach that everything is an interconnected oneness. You heard that in the reading that Teresa did a few minutes ago. And it is something that if you come to a CSL center, the very thing that we teach right off the bat is, and there's 2 points. One is the oneness of all, the interconnectedness of all, that the world of the seen and the world of the unseen is intertwined in some sort of like a big hologram, that every aspect of the one is in every grain of everything. We like to use the phrase that within the oneness of life, however, is the multiplicity of its expressions. You and I are aspects of the divine. You and I and plants and animals and everything in this beautiful world in which we live is an expression of God. We are, in our expressions, the multiplicity, but we are multiplicity within the unity of the one. Ernest Holmes wrote, multiplicity comes from unity without breaking up the unity of the whole. What we experience out in life is God or spirit expressing itself as that thing. So what we're called to do, and our philosophy calls us to do, is to recognize that the divine is expressing itself in all the myriad of ways that it is. So when we experience people who think differently from us, or we experience life events that are different from what we normally would choose, we sit back and honor that. It's not to say that we don't have healthy boundaries dealing with differences, but it is to say that we recognize that that thing that is expressing that might be different from me is God expressing as that. In fact, that's a good mantra to have as you're walking around, is to recognize that every person that you meet is God expressing as that person. You are God expressing as you. And the more that we can shift our thinking into recognizing that oneness and then honoring that multiplicity, then we can get at those points of oneness and diversity that were in the description for today's talk. Next point, that's how science of mind can support us in creating that shared vision that we have, is that we teach that we have the creative power of our thoughts, followed by our words and actions, to create that world. We, as human beings, have a certain degree of power. And that is the key aspect, another key aspect of our teaching. Besides oneness, we teach the power of thought. So if you've taken classes here, one of the things that they get at is the fact that they want you to learn how to change your thinking so that you can change your life. It's easy to say that, but it's harder to put into consistent practice, consistently monitoring your thinking to create more and more thoughts that are in the general direction that you want to go. Now let's go back to that quote that I shared at the beginning of that was in the PR for today's talk. Holmes wrote, "The tree is not a person. All it does is depend on nature. All it knows is to grow. So it never short circuits the divine energy that gives it life." Now, when Holmes made that statement, I think there's two key points he was trying to make. And the very first one is the fact that a tree or anything other than the self-aware humans, anything that has not developed the level of self-awareness, which could be trees, plants, lower level forms of animal life, etc., they have a consciousness and an awareness, and but in that consciousness and awareness, they allow life to unfold for them. They don't take their self-awareness like humans do to get in the way. They simply allow things to work for their greatest good. They know that life is unfolding for them and that their experiences are ones that they don't question. We never hear a tree or a plant or, our pets questioning their value or are they worthy or good enough to have whatever it is they want in life. Which is the other key point I think that Holmes is getting at, is the fact that humans have, within their awareness, crossed a key threshold that allows them to know that they know. And in that knowing, it gives them the power of conscious creative thought, but with power, of course, comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to use our thoughts wisely. One of my key and favorite quotes from Ernest Holmes that many of you have probably heard me use before gets at this very point. Holmes wrote, "Through the eons of time, life has been slowly climbing up the ladder of unfoldment to the present self-conscious state achieved in men. Some degree of consciousness exists in everything because everything is some form of spirit, and spirit is intelligence. However, there are degrees of intelligence or consciousness. We often hear the expression, consciousness sleeps in mineral life, dreams in plant life, awakens in animal life, and comes to self-consciousness in man. Man then stands at the very peak of the evolutionary climb. He's now a self-conscious individual, which means that he not only knows, but he knows that he knows. He can think about his own consciousness, and he now has the power of choice, the very summit of life's upward striving. Evolution through infinite ages has done much for him." So, what I love about that quote is it paints this picture of us evolving to this state where we cross the threshold and we know that we know and we have the power of choice and that we can choose our thoughts in the direction that we want. To choose our lesser path if we so desire, and many of us do that in our lives. Many of us choose looking at lack and poverty and lesser than, looking out at the world and saying it's going to hell in a handbasket. How are we going to get out of the scenarios that we're in? We can focus on the negativity and have our thoughts move in that direction. Or we can shift and use the power of our thoughts for conscious creative good, to focus on that highest vision for the planet, that vision that we were talking about a moment ago. If we can consistently keep our thoughts focused on that, that's not to deny this other is not happening or existing. We look at it, but we turn from that and focus on the world that we want. And the more that we can do that, the more that we're going to create kindness in the world. We're going to be seeing love. We're going to have abundance and prosperity. We're going to create that world that works for everybody. But we have to come together and share this dream. And the third and final way in which science of mind can support us is that building on the power of our thoughts, we can use a concept that we teach that is to build an atmosphere or thought atmosphere around us. You know, it's interesting. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because I wrote a detailed blog on my website, consciousbridge.com. If you go to consciousbridge.com, and one of the blogs that I posted this past week was a long expose on the power of mental atmospheres. I was looking at one of the quotes used for this week's talk that was provided in some material, and that took me down the rabbit hole of thinking, well, what about mental and power of thoughts and mental consciousness? And so I have a long blog out there, and at the very end of the blog are some concepts and ideas for how to put the mental practice into play. But what I'm calling you to do today is just to imagine that as you're thinking, your thoughts are creating a movement in consciousness, and they're creating like a thought bubble or atmosphere around you. Whether it's real or not doesn't matter, but I want you to imagine that you've got this thought atmosphere around you. I really do believe it exists, and I think we can experience that, and my blog goes into more detail on that. But I want you to imagine, you're sort of like Pigpen in the Peanuts comic strip, where you're walking along with a cloud around you all the time, and that cloud is the cloud of all of your thinking. What are you putting into that cloud that you're walking around with? When you bump into somebody that's got negative thinking, are you aware of their cloud? When you bump into somebody who's got a predominance of positive thoughts, are you aware of their cloud? My answer is yes. I know from my own experience that I can see somebody who is very negative, that it just exudes around them, that it extends beyond their form. And it sometimes makes me not want to be around that person. Whereas I'm also attracted to people who have this loving, kind nature that just know that life is working out perfectly. And I want to be around people like that. So the more that we can develop that mental atmosphere, the more that we can come together and share this dream. Because where two or more are gathered, as it says in the Bible, two or more thought atmospheres come together, there's a multiplier effect where we build a bigger mental and thought cloud around us. That's why our spiritual centers are so important, because they bring us together in like-minded individuals who are working towards that world that works for everybody. Now, finally, the third teaching point for this week. First ones were hold the vision, create that vision. The second one was looking at how the science of mind concepts can help us manifest that vision. And the third is how might we actually manifest that dream? How can we? This is where we come back to the homework that I was talking about. I've already given you one homework assignment, and that's to crystallize your vision, share it with somebody else, work out the details of what a vision of the world looks like for you. But now I want you to think about focusing on that vision. I want you to spend some time and seeing the good around you. As you walk around in life each day, I want you to see that all of life is supporting that great and grand vision. Don't dwell on negative effects and things going on in the world. Yes, you're going to find plenty of evidence to say we're not creating the world that we want for our vision. But I want you to see that, acknowledge it, and turn from it, and look and notice and acknowledge those things around you that are working towards that world that we want. Develop an affirmation if you need to. One I like is, I see the good in this situation. I see the good in this situation. Everything is working out for the best. I know that we are evolving towards oneness. I know that we are evolving towards oneness. The point here is that as you encounter events that are less than the vision that we want, turn back to your shared dream, and sometimes having a little affirmation or mantra in your toolbox that you can pull out and repeat either verbally or in your mind will help you reorient your thinking in the direction that you want, so you can have those consistent thoughts I was talking about. Second thing you can do is each day imagine that thought atmosphere around you, attracting the world you want to create. Imagine that the total power of all your thoughts are creating that pigpen-like thought cloud as you walk along, and that as you bump into people, people are attracted to you, that you are the person that people want to be around, because you are the one who's holding that positive vision, and people say, I want what they've got. And third is to look for ways to take positive action. Yes, we always talk about treating and moving your feet. So it's not simply about having the thought and holding the vision, but you've got to look around you and intuitively follow your heart for those areas in your life where they're calling you to be of service? Is there something in your life right now that really is speaking to you as to how you could help manifest the world that works for everyone? If that is, listen to your heart, listen to your intuition, follow that dream, follow it in the area. Is it working with pets? Is it in animals? Is it working with soup kitchens? Is it being a teacher on the internet? Is it being somebody who simply holds heart in interactions at your work affairs? Whatever it is that can be of service to create that dream, that is what you're called to do. So you've got some homework today. Crystallize your vision. See the vision wherever you go in your life. Create that thought atmosphere around you where that vision is continuously interacting with everyone around you. And then seek ways to bring it into fruition through the action that you're doing. I know that through these things, we can all follow the dream, share the dream, and create that world that we all know is possible. Let's pray. As we move into that inner awareness within us where we know there is only one life, one power, one divine essence, where God moves through me as me, I know this day that my words, my thoughts, they are flowing through consciousness, and as a movement in consciousness, they are creating this thought atmosphere, mental atmosphere around me that allows me to be a teacher, to be someone who people want to be around, to be a positive influence for this planet. I know that whatever my heart calls me to do and be, and I know this truth for everyone listening to these words, either live or on the video, that as you listen to these words, you know that somewhere within you, you are being called, that you are aware of that vision of the life possible for you in this world, and you know that you are assisting in the manifestation of it. You know that you are living your dream and that you are being the change you want to see in the world. I know that this community, Centers for Spiritual Living Denver, continues to grow and thrive and support every little pocket of consciousness attracted to it, every one of the multiplicity within the unity of the divine, seeks out CSL Denver and other like-minded communities to assist in uplifting the consciousness of this planet and creating the world possible. I know that through oneness and through the uplifting of our awareness and through our thoughts, our words, and our actions, we are truly creating that world that works for everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. I know this so deeply, and I release these words into that one law, knowing that it is so, and so it is. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. There's a similar video right here next to my face if you want to click on it. Also, if you want to get notifications of future videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the bottom left-hand corner. If you'd like to contact me, email me at the address on the screen or drop me a comment in the comment field below on YouTube. Thanks.